Poor Masamune. No one truly understands him except for me, of course. I remember the very first day we met. It was a cold autumn morning. I had just fixed the children's breakfast. If you didn't know, I own a small orphanage right next to the old hospital. There aren't many orphans here, around 15 or so. It's hard to keep track when they get adopted or whatnot. They're a good bunch of kids. They have good manners and behave. We get along quite well. Occasionally we play games like Goldfish, Monopoly, you name it. We all were eating happily around the table until I heard the bell on the door ringing. A new child this early? I thought to myself. I told the kids to continue eating their waffles and I would be back in a minute. I sat up and headed to the main door. All I had on was a robe and a pair of torn up slippers. I cleaned up my hair and unlocked the door. I opened the door in surprise. It was a police officer with a newborn in his arms. Good morning, ma'am, he said in distress. Can we talk? I invited him in, concerned about what was going on. He sat on the couch with the baby. I stood right across from him. So, what is this all about? I asked. He stared at the baby and spoke. This baby was found in the garbage a few hours ago. He barely made it. Poor guy. Almost froze to death. I cupped my hands on my mouth and began to tear up. The poor baby was all alone in some trash. In the cold, mind you. Where are his parents? I curiously said. He shook his head in response. We checked the local hospital. We found their records, but not them. When we checked the house, it was completely deserted. He stopped talking. He was trying to hold back tears. Both of us said nothing. So, he began, will you take him? The officer lifted the baby to me. I blinked, not knowing what to say. Choking, I hesitated about what I was about to say. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can. I'm not really prepared for a newborn yet. He frowned, looking even more depressed than before. Poor kid looked to be in his early 20s. Where else am I supposed to go? He said in tired frustration. The hospital won't take him, and you're the only orphanage for miles. He needs a place to keep warm. Please. He was pleading with me to take him. I looked down at the baby, then back to the officer. Do you have a bottle and diapers? I asked him. A smile formed on his face. Yes, the police station donated some supplies. You're covered. Covered, huh? I thought in my head. I grabbed the baby, thinking about how difficult it would be. I looked to my left to find the children peeking through the kitchen door. I smirked. What's the baby's name? The cop's face brightened. Masamune. Masamune Kadoya. Masamune, such a character. He was hard to deal with as a baby. He had weird bedtimes, always fussed about something. He was also very sensitive too. As he grew, so did his ego. Masamune always seemed to cause trouble. Whenever he lost a game with the other children, he grew irritated and yelled at them to play again. He hated to lose. It was like he wanted to prove something. As time passed, each child got adopted to families. I missed them. They were such good children. New orphans arrived as soon as the others were gone. The only one from the original group still here was Masamune. Parents didn't want him for his energetic personality. I think he was too much for them to handle. Whenever we were in the middle of an interview with a family, he would yell and run around. They usually left after 5 minutes or so. None seemed interested to take him. Poor kid. He's been through so much with no mother or father to be with him. What is wrong with those people? Leaving their own child in the cold all alone? Makes me sick. One day, when I was knitting, I heard a commotion downstairs. I quickly put on my slippers and robe and made my way down. It was coming from the living room. I pushed the door to find Jay having a headlock on Masamune. Jay was one of the new orphans. He arrived last week. Come on, Jay. Let go of him, I demanded. Jay did as I said. Now what's this about? He told me that him and Masamune were just playing, but I knew that it was a lie. Jay has always had something against Masamune. I'm not sure why. Masamune looked like he was in pain. I sent Jay to the corner and took Masamune to his room. What happened, Masamune? I asked. He replied, Jay cheated on Monopoly, so I confronted him about it. When I called him a cheater, he started to choke me. I sighed. Next time you should come and see me before taking it into your own hands, Masamune. He looked angry. I don't need your help. I frowned at that sentence. I'd been with him ever since he was a newborn. Why was he being this way? I'm only trying to help Masamune, I said, hoping that he would understand that he doesn't need to fight these battles alone. Well, could you please stop? You're not my mom. I froze. Figuring out what to say, I led him to his room and placed him in his bed. As I was about to walk out the door, a voice called out to me. Why did my parents abandon me? Was I not good enough for them? I turned around and saw the small figure on the bed crying. I slowly walked over to him and wrapped my arms around him. No, Masamune, there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, I bet you were too good for them. His whimpers minimized. I wish I knew them, to know what it felt like to be loved by a family. I loosened my hug and gently lifted his chin up to look at me. Masamune, I began while rubbing the tears from his eyes. I love you. Then out of nowhere, he gave me a hug in response, crying even more than before. At that moment, I understood. Masamune wasn't just some troublemaker. He wasn't heartless or hateful. He just wanted to be loved, to mean something to someone. This kid has spent his life without his parents. I'm not surprised about how he acts. Oh, Masamune, I said, while stroking his hair. You're going to do great things. Christmas was right around the corner. Every year I buy the children gifts. Donations really help out. It felt like I was shopping forever. The crowd was so big. I could barely move at all. At last, I got every child a gift except for Masamune. I wanted his present to be special. I searched and searched, but didn't find anything that wowed me. Then when I walked down the icy sidewalk, I saw a group of children around some sort of circle. I quietly observed what they were up to. They were playing with tops of some kind. It fascinated me. I asked them what they were called and where I could get one. The kids called it Beyblade. They said I could buy one at the Bay shop. I thanked them and was on my way to get Masamune the best Christmas present ever. It didn't take long to make it. It was only a few blocks down the road. As I made my way in, I was baffled. I was overwhelmed by how many there were. Welcome, said one of the employees at the cash register. Need help finding anything? No thank you, I replied, still amazed at how many Beyblades were on the shelves. I began my search. There were some pretty ones with many different colors and shapes, but none of them felt like the one. As I was about ready to quit my search altogether, I saw one. It was a beautiful green and purple unicorn. I picked it up and observed at the high quality of it, looking very nice and unique. I checked the tag of it. Ray Unicorno D125CS. Excuse me, young man, I replied, hoping to get his attention. Yes, he said back. Is this a good one? I lifted up the top to show him. It's very rare, actually. In fact, it's the first one we've ever seen before. One of a kind. Interesting, I thought. I walked over to the employee and said with a bright smile, I'll take it. Finally, I was done shopping. The boy gave me the Beyblade and this launcher you need for it. All I thought was how happy Masamune would be. Christmas came, all the presents were wrapped and under the tree except for Masamune's. I wanted to surprise him. The children opened their presents before I could even blink. All their warm smiles filled me with joy. Masamune got up later than everyone else. He checked under the tree and found nothing. His expression grew sad. I walked up to him. What's wrong, Masamune? I asked. He shrugged. Nothing. I just thought... He stopped when I revealed a bright red and green present with a big tag reading, To Masamune. A small grin appeared on his face. Thanks, he politely said. You're welcome, I replied, handing the present to him. He gently tore the wrapping off. His mouth gaped open. He lifted it out of the box to look at it. Is this a Beyblade? I replied with a yes. Tears formed in his eyes. Masamune, what's the matter? You don't like the gift? I asked, hoping that I didn't ruin this child's Christmas. No, I love my gift. It's just that... He paused. No one has ever been as nice to me as you have before. Thank you. He rushed over to me and gave me a hug. We had turkey and mashed potatoes for dinner. Everyone seemed to enjoy it, especially Masamune. He ate his entire plate in minutes. After he was done, he asked to be excused. I obliged. Being curious, I followed him. He walked outside in the snow with something in his hands. He stopped in the middle of a small snow pile. He shouted at the top of his lungs, 3, 2, 1, let it rip! He launched Unicorno as hard as he could through the winter air. As time passed, Masamune changed. He was happier. Every afternoon, he would practice his launch in the same spot he was at that Christmas night. He did this all day. I insisted that he should come inside for a little bit, but he always declined. He was having too much fun. He told me once that he would be the best, number 1. I giggled at how cute he was. Masamune always wanted me to see how much he improved. I suppose he wanted me to be proud of him. I already was. He learned a new trick with his unicorno. Apparently, it could disappear. I thought it was magic at first, but it turns out that the tip makes it change its speed. I love that Masamune was getting out and enjoying himself, but deep down it felt like it was getting out of hand. One day in fall, I was fixing pie for the children. I called Masamune, but he didn't respond. I rushed outside to the exact same spot where he trained. At first, I saw nothing. Then, covered by leaves, was Masamune's collapsed body. About 10 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. Seeing Masamune being pushed on the stretcher was the scariest experience of my life. I prayed to God that he would be okay. The doctor said he just collapsed from exhaustion. I was afraid something like this would happen. He remained in the hospital for a couple of days. He was so weak he could barely move his arms. The nurse said I should get some rest, but I didn't. I wanted to be with Masamune to give him some company. Masamune wanted to get out of bed, but I insisted that he took it easy for a while. He was depressed by this fact. After the doctor did a checkup on Masamune, we were free to go. As soon as we got back to the orphanage, the only thing Masamune thought about was Beyblade. I begged him to rest, but he didn't want to. I didn't want to be the bad guy, but I was afraid that I had to be. When Masamune was asleep, I took Unicorno's launcher out of his drawer. I hid it under one of the floorboards in my room so that he wouldn't find it. I was afraid of the consequences of what would happen if Masamune continued to train so intensely without a rest. The morning after that, Masamune frantically looked for his Beyblade and launcher. He never found them. He asked me if I knew where they were. I said no. I swallowed with a bitter taste in my mouth. I didn't want to lie to him, but it was for his own good. Masamune grew sad. He couldn't find his unicorn or launcher no matter how hard he looked. I felt terrible. Beyblade became his life and I took it away from him. The consequences for my actions, however, came into effect. Masamune changed. He grew angry and started to spike up his hair. I didn't like what he was becoming. I wanted to wait just a little longer to give him back his things. That might have been a mistake. I was reading on my bed when suddenly I hear Masamune yelling at the children. I rushed into their room to see what was going on. "I know you have it!" Masamune yelled at Jay. "I don't know what you're talking about, Masamune," Jay said in a confused tone. "You really think I believe you?" Masamune grabbed Jay's shirt and pushed him to the wall. "Where is it?" Masamune screamed, still grasping Jay's shirt. "I don't know." Jay was bawling at this point. That was when I intervened. "Masamune, stop!" I yelled. He gave me a dirty look. "Jay has my unicorno and launcher. I know he does." My eyes watered, knowing the true fact of where his possessions were. I opened my mouth to speak, but Masamune cut me off. "I'm so sick of you messing with me," he said. As he was about to swing at Jay, I grabbed his hand. "Masamune," I said, with a grim expression. It was me. I took it." Masamune let go of Jay and turned his gaze to me, a puzzled look on his face. None of us said a word. The room grew quiet. Not even the crowd of children eavesdropping in the other room didn't make a sound. You? He stuttered, crystals falling down his face. Why? Why would you do this to me? He asked. I couldn't say anything. Forming words at the time was impossible. At last I spoke. When you're at that hospital. I took a deep breath. That was the most terrifying experience of my life. Masamune froze. I never want anything to happen to you again, Masamune. I slowly let go of his hand, hoping he would understand that my intentions were not meant to hurt him. When he was about to open his mouth to speak, the door slammed open. I walked over to see who it was. There, standing at the work desk, was a rich-looking couple who were a little too overdressed. They wanted to adopt. I introduced all of the children. The couple were pretty stuck up, but I didn't mind. The children didn't seem to like them very much. I personally couldn't blame them. After looking through all the kids, they were not impressed. Till they saw Masamune. For some reason, they wanted him. I was happy that someone wanted to adopt him, but at the same time I was sad. He was always a special person in my life. But this was best for him. I mean, sure, the couple were uptight, but they looked clean enough. He deserved a better life than this. Masamune looked concerned. He ran into his room and slammed the door behind him. I told the couple to wait just for a moment. Then I made my way to Masamune's room. He was on his bed face down. "They seem like good people," I said. He lifted his head and replied, "I'm not going." I slowly moved closer to him. "But isn't this what you wanted? A family?" He rolled over. "I already have a family." "Can you at least give this a chance, Masamune? I promise. I'll come check to see how you're doing." His face loosened up. "You promise?" he asked. "I promise." He packed his things that he needed rather quickly. He didn't have much, just the essentials like a toothbrush, comb, and a few pairs of clothes. I grabbed him his favorite red jacket that he wore literally everywhere, and secretly grabbed his unicorn launcher out of the floorboards. Masamune in the other room was saying his goodbyes to the other children, even Jay. The couple signed some papers and introduced themselves to Masamune. He did the same. As he was about to walk out of the door, I stopped him. He turned around to find Unicorno in my hand while the launcher was in the other. He looked at me and smiled, gently taking them out of my hands. "Thanks," he said, giving me one last hug in the process. They walked to their car and left. Masamune gave me one last wave goodbye before he disappeared in the distance. That was the last time I saw Masamune. A week after he left, I decided to give the couple a call to see how Masamune was doing. There was no service. After many failed phone calls, I flew an airplane to the address they wrote down on the papers. It was vacant. I didn't understand. In panic, I called the police to report a missing child. They searched but couldn't find him. Each passing day was torture, expecting the police to find him, or at the most, the couple who took him in the first place. Years later, the police gave up the search. They declared him possibly dead. I was in denial. My heart was telling me that he was out there somewhere. In the meantime, I'm here, sitting in my ancient rocking chair, hoping that one day Masamune would show up, even though that most likely will never happen. I shouldn't have rushed him into getting adopted. It's because of me that he's gone. I'm so sorry, Masamune. I just finished the dishes. The kids are watching TV in the living room. It's almost their bedtime. I got out of my rocking chair and headed to the living room to tell the children to get ready for bed. They were saddened by this, but agreed. They were watching some Beyblade thing. I didn't really pay attention. As I reached for the remote to turn off the TV, the announcer's words sent chills down my spine. "It's a done deal. Say hello, everyone, to Masamune Kadoya, the second representative for Team Japan." The camera zoomed in on him. A smile crept on my face. "Good luck, Masamune."